I didn't even get to ask you about Ghislaine Maxwell, but it's okay. We don't
It's
need to talk
fine.
about
We
that.
argued her case. My partner, Diana Fabi Sampson, argued her case in the federal court maybe 6 weeks ago now. And we're waiting to hear the result. But that case, just like Harvey's case, we lost in the intermediary court and then we won at the highest court. I have a feeling that may happen here with Ghislaine's case. We may lose at the intermediary court, but this is a court that can go to the United States Supreme Court. There are some serious issues there that the court may take up. And boy, would it be cool to go to Washington, D.C. and argue there. Woo. I get nervous just talking about that.
Well, so does she have an opinion on Jeff Epstein and his demise?
Sure.
Are you going to share it?
I can't. I would get in trouble.
If you have an opinion, are you allowed to share it or not really? Because you represent her?
I have my own opinion. And I have nothing to base this on. I saw him 2 or 3 days before he died. I went to go visit another client, and he was sitting right there. He was meeting with lawyers or paralegals or something. If memory serves me correctly, he had just lost 2 bids for bail. So he was trying to get out on bail twice, and he was denied twice. He had already done jail time down in Florida years before. And I think he knew that he was never getting out of jail. And this guy led a hedonistic life, private jets, caviar, champagne, his own island, come and go, everything, Kentucky Derby, Super Bowl, World Series. Like, he led that life. And the MDC is not that life. That's the Metropolitan Detention Center, where it's a rough place to be. And in my opinion, I wouldn't be. And he has no wife, no kids. He had a brother he's estranged from, no parents. He had nothing to live for. In other words, the only thing this guy was living for was his money and what the money could buy him. In prison, your money's buying you mackerel, like literally mackerel. Like that's what they eat out of the can and other stuff from commissary. Unlike Harvey, Harvey's got little kids. He's got relatively young children who he talks to. He's got friends who call him. I don't think Jeffrey Epstein was in that position. So I wouldn't be shocked if he was like, look, man, I'm in my 60s. I had a great run. Bye-bye. I'm out of here. You guys aren't abusing me like this.
I know, but I just think it's weird that, he was very high profile. I'm surprised nobody caught him trying, to hang himself.
Well, that's a different story. As I said, Marlene, I'm basing it on nothing except common sense.
So, I know people argue suicide versus murder, but I would argue the middle, which is almost like an assisted suicide. Like everybody turned the other cheek and he did what he had to do. So it's kind of like,
yeah. And who knows? He's got enough money. He may have paid them to turn the other cheek.
You run in this legal circle in New York. You run in a lot of circles in New York, right? And you deal with a lot of high-profile people. And there are people who we both know, who I will not name, that do what you do and represent people who aren't as big as some of your clients. They get too big and they kind of lose their personality or their humility or whatever. And you have not. So my question is that your nature? Or is it a conscious effort on your part to not become the jerk who represents the quote-unquote jerk?
Now it's like Marlena Shivo, PhD, psychiatry. It's a couple of things. I was blessed to be raised by all 4 of my grandparents. I mean, of course, my parents are still, God bless, alive and well. My dad's going to be 86. My mom's 83. They keep me pretty grounded. But my grandparents, my grandfather, who I'm named after, Artie Idala, he was a pretty famous guy because he was a boxing judge. And this is in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s when boxing was like the number one sport. And when I was in school and they were taking attendance and they would say my name, like a majority of the teachers knew that name and related to it. And then when I got into the courthouse, the same thing with the judges. And I remember one time speaking to my grandfather and mentioning that to him. And he's one of the few people in my life who actually called me Artie. Most people call me Arthur, as per my mother. And I'll never forget what he said, Marlene. He said, Artie, remember one thing. Fame is a bunch of empty noise. And, you process that for a little bit. And then I got my father, this is pre-internet, saying, today's newspaper is tomorrow's fish wrapper. And
Mm.
I kind of keep that in the front of my mind. And anyone who knows me a little bit knows it's so much about my family and my extended family and my friends. Like, those are the things that really count to me. Of course, when we got the decision 3 weeks ago now about the Harvey Weinstein case, I mean, I haven't worked, Marlena, that hard since I studied for the bar exam in 1992. I worked so hard on that oral argument. And I argued my tail off, and we got a positive result. But that's great and that's wonderful. But now, like, okay, now what's next? Like, what case am I going to lose next?
Right.
So I just, I keep my feet planted firmly on the ground. Joe Torre, the New York Yankees, who was a great Italian American who I look up to, in his book about his time at the New York Yankees, he says, never get too high with the highs and too low with the lows. They should be like that zone. You're staying in the middle. And that's what I try to do. Whether that's like intentional or my nature, I would say it's a little bit of both. You mentioned, like, I'm a little tired. I kind of would love someone to go and get me some, like, ibuprofen or something like that. Now, I have like 3 interns outside, but I don't feel comfortable asking them, like, could you do me a favor? Could you run up the block to Duane Reade and just grab me a box of ibuprofen? Like, whereas I know that there were plenty of people in my position who, like, would be doing that without even batting an eyelash. But, that's just not who I am.
It's funny that you say that, but and I don't know if it's from past experience or if it's just who you are or a combination of both. But I was an intern once, and I remember thinking, I'm not learning anything. I was an intern at the Tonight Show with Jay Leno back in the day.
That's cool.
Right?
Sounds cool anyway.
What's that?
It sounds cool.
It was cool. It was there was a lot of good. I got a lot of good experience, but there were people that wanted me to do exactly that, right? Go get them lunch, stock the fridge with different things. And I just thought, this is not what an internship is, right? So when I eventually graduated and I was working at CNN and I had interns, I never, ever would ask them to go fetch my anything, right? Like, ever. And so I get exactly what you're saying.
See, we're like the same person, Molly.
So, like, we can't even argue. Why is it that you and I can argue in person, but we can't argue on a podcast?
I was going to come out here and just yell for no reason. I usually like, get a little more animated when people are saying things that I think are ridiculous. So please take it as a compliment that I don't think anything that you said today was ridiculous. If you did, I'd be pushing back at you.
Actually, I lost my train of thought while you were actually talking about the fact that you're not going to yell at me. But I feel like we have yelled at each other before, but why is that?
I don't know. You're usually pretty mean and obnoxious to me.
What's that?
I said you're usually kind of mean and obnoxious to me, so.
I don't think so.
No.
Maybe, who knows? I mean, maybe I'm not self-aware. But you go do your law thing, and thank you again for joining me. And I'll see you soon-ish.
Well, thank you for giving me the privilege to chat with you here.
All right, take it easy.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.